The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, folks. We'll give a minute for folks to join. Yeah. I'm just going to give a couple more minutes. I know folks have busy schedules, but we will fit it in today. Me and Richard have been practicing very earnestly to make sure that this is the most amazing presentation you will see today. But based on past experiences, we'll get a few more folks if I give a couple minutes as they wrap out their 1 o'clock call. All right, cool. Wait a couple of minutes. A little bit of housekeeping before we start. There is a Q&A for GoToWebinar. You can ask questions in there. We will try to get them answered as fast as possible. We will save these questions and try to get them online somewhere if they're relevant for others. Feel free to ask as many questions as you want. It's helpful. It lets me know people are actually listening and have questions around it. There's also a chat room in there. Just a little bit, it works like any chat room, but the question answer might be easier, so we actually get a log of the questions. This will be recorded. That question will be asked regardless, I guarantee it, but this will be recorded and it will be posted to Ansible.com. With that, let's get started. This webinar is introducing the Red Hat Ansible Automation Platform. This was announced at Ansible Fest this year. My name is Sean Cavanaugh. I do technical marketing for Red Hat. And today, we're very honored to have Richard. I'm handing it over to you, Richard. Are you ready to go?
I am, Sean. Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone, or evening, if you're like me, also in the United Kingdom or Europe. So as Sean said, yeah, the automation platform was our main announcement at Ansible Fest back in September in Atlanta. And it depends whether if some of you are existing Ansible customers, either Engine Tower or use open source Ansible or are new to Ansible. We sort of wanted to explain to you a bit about what the platform is, but also how we got to this point in our journey, to match the journey that you're taking with automation yourselves. And so I'll talk a bit about that first, then we'll get into what some of the details of the platform is, and then Sean will guide through a demo of some of the new services that we're offering that form the platform on top of the existing Ansible solutions you're familiar with. So I'll get moving. So for most people, right, if you think about how you first got into Ansible, into the automation concept as IT has evolved in the most recent years, the first successes with Ansible were really because we managed to find a way to simplify the act of performing automation. So Ansible in its own right is an easier way of automating than many of the tools that have existed and still exist today. And anybody that's been around for a longer number of years. Those of us on the slightly older side can probably think through 3 or 4, maybe even 5 generations of automation tooling. But very often those different tools are all very specific to solve a certain purpose. They may have been very specific to the platform, operating system, technology in question that they're being used for. And so once we found that way to simplify how automation could be done, and Ansible expanded across multiple different technology domains, covered off different types of technology, so not just your Linux server, Windows, but also into network, storage, obviously all the things in cloud that are possible. You know, we found that we started to see new problems or new challenges to be faced start to emerge. And so we then got to this level where people are automating, right? And automation's been around for a while anyway, so this isn't exactly a new art form, but it's a much more common set of skills for people to adopt in IT in the current world, especially with the advent of cloud. And so what we've started to recognize is we need to make it easier for people to get access to the automations. It's not just about the act of automating, it's also gaining access to the tooling to help with automation, the skills required, the ability to share knowledge, to make it easier for people to find what they're looking for. And this also comes down to a conversation we have with lots of customers as well, is that it's moved away from this initial conversation, which is, I really want to automate. What can I automate? How can I automate? And starts to become for how do I automate more? How do I get more of my teams performing automation? How do I get more of my departments, my technologies covered by that same automation capability? Because people are now evolving what it is they're actually trying to achieve with what they can do with automation technologies. And so we get to this question of, if that's the case, why aren't we all automating? Because if we know we want to, and we know that we've made it easier to do so, what's preventing teams from adopting this at full force? What's providing a hindrance or preventing people from achieving what's currently possible? And the sort of shift we're seeing in the way that this is addressed is moving away from that organic team-based automation, hitting individual tasks, just taking the steps away from what you would type at a command line. And we're actually moving to a point where organizations and whole departments, teams, etc., are forming part of what's the automation strategy that you want to try and get to. And with that comes a change, that change that comes from a customer and from a user base of how people are evolving, also then means that we have to match the evolution of what we're trying to offer to help customers and users meet those new goals they're trying to achieve. And so, from our perspective, we started off with this ease of tackling manual processes, create the automation, catalyze the community, and then start to expand through scale and how to control automation in a solid way. And that's the story that's existed for Ansible since the core project was released, and then Ansible Tower came along. And the thing is, we've got to get to that next step now, is how do we actually start to innovate and change what can be achieved with an automation discipline that organizations want to adopt. And that's where we've arrived at this distinction of what the Ansible, or the Red Hat Ansible automation platform is. And that's what the new sort of offering we're trying to form and bring together for customers and users to adopt automation is as a target. Sorry, losing track of my thoughts. But then the next question we have to ask, so we say, here's a platform. And then everybody starts to think, well, platforms is a very broad term. Platform can mean an awful lot of different things. And in all fairness, isn't everything a platform? Everybody claims to want to have a platform. And I think, it's a fair question for us to try and address this. Because the difference in what we see in what a platform is versus just a product and a technology and a tool set is how we can help the user. Rather than just provide a set of features and functions and capabilities to do something, it's actually how we can help the user to achieve an outcome, which is different necessarily than sometimes what a product just helps you do as a tool. It's the same thing as if you think about a toolbox versus a toolbox with a full set of manuals and instructions on how to create something, how to build something. And so from our point of view, a platform can help you both create and scale, which is what we do today. It's also how you engage users. It's how you bring those different users that want to achieve something to a single place that they can collaborate, coordinate with other users in the organization, and achieve those outcomes they're looking for. And so if we think about what those different stages are, well, Create, in our terms, is Ansible engine, Ansible core, the Ansible project, depends how you know it when you're first introduced to it, which is the universal language for automation. So what's the framework for actually achieving that automation task you want to do? The next level is how do we scale that? Because most people don't work on a single machine. Most people work across many hundreds, if not thousands, or if you're very unlucky, tens of thousands of different servers or devices that you have to try and manage in a controlled, organized fashion. And so Ansible Tower is there to help with that aspect of what we do. And I want to make sure that we understand these two components don't go anywhere, right? So engine and tower, which will most likely what you have if you're a customer of Red Hat today, are still this core nucleus of what Ansible, the automation platform, is going to be. We're not changing those components. We made a very conscious effort not to try and do what a lot of technology companies have to do when they evolve as we're doing, which is to create something new, and therefore mean you have to go and do a full migration from what you've got today. So it's very important that people realize that Tower and Engine are still this core beating heart of what the platform is going to be. But what comes next are those components that really start to make the platform what it is. And this is what I call the engage phase. So this is the part where rather than just dealing with the technology and the tasks you can achieve against the technology, we're talking about the capabilities and the features that actually apply to the users of the system. It's the people parts of what we're trying to do. And some of these aren't specific to Ansible. They're just capabilities we're focusing on Ansible and offering them as part of the platform to try and make the active automation easier, simpler, and better to scale and organize. So that goes with knowledge about what your automation has been doing. We've got how to collaborate through one of the new features called Automation Hub, which is effectively a customer version of Galaxy. To get trust around what content can be used, should be used, is allowed to be used, and what's supported as part of what you purchase as a Red Hat subscription. And how we can help users accelerate the adoption of different parts of the automation story in their organizations through the way we're changing the technology underneath the Ansible solutions through collections. And all the time with all these, it's about how do we bring those different components together and make them accessible to all the different users in an organization that may want to actually achieve automation in some way, shape, or form. And so the other aspect of what we're seeing is it's no longer just the system administration team, so the Linux team. It's no longer just the Windows team or a database team that wants to automate. We're starting to see more interest from organizations in how do we get business users to be able to automate certain tasks and workflows they want to achieve. How do they gain access to the services and automation functions that other downstream teams have created, so you remove that burden on who gets to execute. We've got things like security with the Ansible security automation that's just been released, which is how do we expand that into different domains that are so closely related, they're almost symbiotic with the teams that we normally associate these technologies with, but actually have a fundamentally different aspect or approach to what they're trying to do, but give them that common capability so they can almost communicate through the capability of automation rather than it have to be something that's done through different silos, different domain-specific languages or different technology groups, which often makes things quite hard to achieve. So at this point, Sean, do you want to jump over to yourself and just start to go through some of those components, and then we'll start to fill in more of the details as we...
That's good. I'll let you interrupt me. Here, let me take over for a second. Let's see what this GoToMeeting does. I think that worked. You can see it? All right. So that engage layer, like what does that mean today? What will you see at launch? We can actually show this. This is live demo, so hopefully it all works as intended. This isn't a recording. I'm on the beta site. This will launch, the goal is the 14th. So this will be available to paying customers. This is a value add. There's no subscription price increase. This is part of the platform offering for current subscribers. So when you go to cloud.redhat.com, you're greeted with these cards for different software as a service offerings that Red Hat gives. A lot of our customers are familiar with Red Hat Insights. When this launches, you will see this move, Red Hat Ansible Automation Platform. This card will start showing up. I'm logged in on the beta site. I have a few accounts where we're just playing around with this. The beta site's available for our partners and our own employees to start messing with. And you can see it's a tech preview. We'll go ahead and click on Automation Analytics. Each offering has its own little area, and you can tell which application and offering you're in based on the name on the left. So you can see it says Red Hat Ansible Automation Platform. So let me minimize the GoToWebinar thing. So in here, we default to a dashboard. This is the dashboard for Automation Analytics. This is an optional opt-in feature that now Tower can sync to cloud.redhat.com. This is not turned on by default. This is not required. We know there's certain customers that cannot give data to Red Hat. We will have detailed information on Ansible.com about what data is being collected, but we're not gaining information around those end systems. We're not getting facts about those end systems. We're getting information about automation, such as module usage, times of playbooks, things specifically around the automation, job failures. This differs from the dashboard from something like Red Hat Ansible Tower in that it's showing all clusters. So if I look in the top right here, a cluster is an individual installation of Red Hat Ansible Tower. It's mostly geolocated, or should be. It means it could be a single data center for a city, or a single data center location, or a separate install. It doesn't have anything to do with isolated nodes for Ansible Tower. I can actually sort and click a specific sub-cluster, and I can get a line graph breakdown. These are job runs. A job run, for those unfamiliar with Tower, equates to a job template. A job template is an Ansible playbook plus a credential plus an inventory. So it becomes really easy as you scale out jobs, not just to scale out, but to start engaging with the individual success criteria across an organization. Now, some of this data is fake because I'm on an engineering account. You can see that the failures and success rates are the same for this particular job, but that's done on purpose just to map it out over time. But what you could start seeing is it's really clear if I have a job template succeeding in 5 data centers, but not a 6th one, I could start diving in and seeing that data really quickly at a high level. So you can start enabling folks. I'm going to go back to all clusters. You can see holistic. So red means job template failure, green means job template pass, and you can see the amount of job templates. We can also kind of look back past 2 weeks. We can look back past a month and get more and more granular data. If I scroll down, I'll start seeing kind of cards that start breaking out additional information. In the bottom left, I can see top templates. Again, this is top templates across all clusters. So I can start seeing adoption, like why is Verify Network the most used job template across all clusters? That's super interesting. And I can kind of dive in and look at like that particular job template and see what clusters it's being run on at what times, and kind of getting more information. I can see top modules. So top modules is something interesting. It's not a killer feature by any means, right? But this is something really interesting for an organization, because if I could start seeing if shell showed up here or command as a top module, I could start seeing like, why is a non-stateful, non-idempotent module being used? I can start measuring success of automation and going to that group and saying like, hey, instead of using this module, try this module, which is intended for this purpose. That could be like a takeaway really quickly as we get more and more information into the platform. On the bottom right is notifications. Now the launch date, some of this is going to be pretty limited, but this is matching the kind of algorithms that we have in Red Hat Insights, where basically I apply data, I make a rule set across that data, and then I can provide interesting information. So at launch, we just kind of know if a cluster is down, which is obviously not a replacement for monitoring by any means. I also know when it's last synced to cloud.redhat.com, so I can actually troubleshoot and sync that platform. Things we're trying to identify for future features include looking at my license utilization across multiple clusters and seeing if an individual node within a cluster is down. So those are kind of the initial ones. They're fairly limited, we realize this, but I think what you're going to see is this notification is going to be one of the most important features of analytics in the future, but we just got to get more data so we can see kind of what interesting, cool things we can start noticing. I'm going to scroll up, move over to another tab, basically. This is organization statistics. So we worked with several kind of customers to figure out what analytics would be interesting to them. So we did not try to develop a tool in isolation without feedback from our customers. And what we noticed with some of our customers that are farther ahead in automation space, where they have a year or 2 years or 3 years in developing automation, is that they did not know how to measure success. Meaning, when are you done? How do you say, like, I did it, I've digitally transformed my company, I now did automation, I'm done, like, what's the next thing? And as we all know, like managing IT infrastructure and managing processes and et cetera, is an always ongoing 24/7 job to keep a company up and running. But what we can do is start trying to get data to help organizations measure success across an enterprise. So what we do in here is on the right, I can kind of scroll down and I can actually toggle different groups across my enterprise and start comparing, like, why is the Red Hat group here so low? Are they not needing automation? Is their job templates just way longer job templates? And other organizations have tons of little job templates with 1 to 2 Ansible playbook tasks. So I can start getting in here, and while this doesn't provide the nirvana moment, it starts giving ahas to, like, why, well, this is interesting, let's dive in and look at this. So as we provide this information now, I can see really quickly that this Red Hat group is only performing at maximum 30 jobs in a single day, where if I look at this network group, they're performing well over 300. That's kind of interesting takeaway. I can kind of scroll down and start measuring this different ways. In the bottom left, I have job runs by organization. You again can see that Red Hat is small. Without having the bottom right graph, I could make a guess that maybe the Red Hat group has 1 job template with 1,000 tasks in it. So we measure it a different way as well. It's not just job runs, the amount of job templates that have run and executed on a cluster somewhere within my enterprise. But I can also look at individual tasks. So we can see here that it's actually not the case. The Red Hat group for this particular enterprise is just not running much automation at all. They're not running many job templates, and the job templates they have don't have that many tasks in them. So we can start comparing these organizations and say, like, there's probably something wrong. If my default group is purple, it's about 25%. Every other group's 25%, and then this Red Hat group is like 2%. Now, it could be an easy one here, is that default group's just a catch-all, and maybe that is Red Hat. So you can start diving down and kind of measuring success. But the real goal here, right, is while these 2 tabs and these little cards don't solve all problems, is we're starting to graph the data holistically across the enterprise. And that is extremely important, where this data set might not answer all the questions, it's asking a lot of questions that weren't being asked before. And you can start kind of seeing, like, what does success look like? Did this group perform automation and they're reaching this kind of this moment of production that I want my other groups to? And I can also see job templates across the organization. So if I have a job template made by the network group and then the compute group starts running that job template, I could actually see the adoption curve over time for that particular job template kind of growing. So that becomes interesting too, is how do I measure success and how do I make an automation center of excellence? And that's kind of the question that automation analytics is trying to answer. Before I move into Hub, Richard, I don't know if you have any other things you want to point out for analytics.
I mean, the thing I'd say with analytics is, as Sean's mentioned a few times, we didn't want to sit there and go, spend a year with 20 different customers and figure out what every person, every different team could conceive of as something to see. The advantage of doing this through the SaaS capability that we've got with cloud.redhat.com is that we can iterate on this much faster than if we delivered it as part of Tower and then stuck with that release cadence. So as we move forward, we'll add more analytics capability. We start to see the data and start to figure out not just what we can work out from the information we get, but also what customers actually say they want to see. Because I think that's the important part with this is, all of these features are about what makes it better for what you get to actually see, understand, and can achieve. And so you're the main input for us on what this needs to become. So yeah, that's the point. So it will continue to grow, and we'll add more capability as quickly as we can.
Let's see what else. So automation analytics, it's I think super helpful on day one. However, like we're gonna obviously, as we get lots of data, this is a new feature, we'll be able to do a lot more interesting things. And I think just at launch, just the questions I'm starting to answer, like I would want something like this as soon as you run, like I always say, Tower becomes interesting when I have 2 or more people using the same playbook. So a lot of people ask me that question is like, what's Tower? How is that different from open source Ansible? And I always say 2 or more people, it becomes interesting in a scale, right? Tower can obviously scale to hundreds of users and thousands of systems like Richard said, but when does it become interesting? I think automation analytics becomes interesting pretty much as soon as you're using Tower, and especially as soon as you have 2 or more clusters, it becomes almost mandatory. It's something that you want to have rather than like it's cool to have. Like it just becomes something that you need to be able to start measuring success. I'm gonna move down to Automation Hub. So for those unfamiliar, we've had collections available since Ansible 2.8, and then with 2.9 for Ansible Engine 2.9, they became mainline supported. And basically what Automation Hub is, right, is it's a catalog of certified supported collections curated in an easy online manner. So you could think of it as if the platform's an iPhone, this is the App Store, or if it's it could be just your service catalog of pre-existing content. So what's content? Content to us is anything Ansible. Specifically, what you'll see on launch is modules. Everyone that knows Ansible loves modules. They understand a module and a task have a one-to-one correlation. So module means I can do work. Roles are pre-existing playbooks that are reusable for folks. And then we have plugins. So plugins can be, in a way, a module is a plugin, but a plugin kind of differentiates as it can do work within any parameter in a playbook. Like, do we look up from this system and provide the information back to me? Or transform this data model into pretty JSON? Like, plugins are quite diverse in the amount of things that they can do. They're kind of the gears in the engine, as we like to say, that kind of do work for us. A lot of plugins kind of don't reinvent the wheel. We just use pre-existing Python-isms that folks are used to, and it becomes really easy. We are going to launch 15, I think is the count, of certified partners at launch. You can see some of them in the beta here already. We can see Google Cloud. We can see Pure Storage has a couple different namespaces in here. And we have this F5 one that I'll dive into. One of the things that Richard talked about, and we talked about at Ansible Fest, and we talked about during the collection webinars, is about how to scale Ansible, the open source project, for lots of users while simultaneously making it easy for Red Hat customers and kind of have our cake and eat it too, meaning like a win-win for everyone. What we see here is we can have certain modules that look similar to certified supported modules, and it becomes confusing to both the community and customers which content is supported, certified, and which content's just community users contributing. And in an ideal world, you want both. Like you want to be able to use some community and some certified. We just need to make it really easier to understand what is certified and what isn't. So at launch, we'll only have partners with certified content in Hub, but as we go on, there will be other content in there that will be clearly marked. You can see right now that it's marked with a certified with a little ribbon stamp. I don't know how to describe that symbol. It's like a blue, reminds me of like a thing they put on pumpkins at the fair. But it clearly is marked to make sure that you understand that this collection is actually the official F5 collection and not just some random integrator or community member or whatever else. Not to say that their content's not important, but it just becomes really clear to that customer that they have not a throat to choke, but a hand to shake and a support case that they can open with a specific company. So all of these partners have a joint contract with Red Hat, so you can open a ticket either place, and we'll make sure that customer is supported. Let me refresh. I think I idled out as I was. Uh-oh. I know. Oh, I need to. He doesn't have access. Let me log back in. I gotta go on my account. Sorry. In the beta, I have a bunch of different Red Hat accounts as I'm playing with it. And for those not using password managers, I highly recommend them, or it will make me go insane. So click on collection. So in here, I clicked on the F5 namespace. So namespace is that highest level hierarchy within Automation Hub. A namespace can contain multiple collections. And in here, I can actually dive in right into the modules. So similar to Galaxy, Galaxy will be kind of the upstream to Hub, and Hub is the certified supported Red Hat product that is included in your Red Hat subscription. I can see that the command is very similar for folks unaware that Ansible Galaxy command allows me to install collections. So I can actually see right here that to install this particular collection, the F5 networks namespace dot the F5 modules collection. It'll actually have detailed directions here. I can load the full README. I can see the requirements as this particular collection only works in Ansible 2.9 and greater. If I click the full README, it takes me to the documentation tab. I can actually sort through here and click any particular module. A requirement for Automation Hub isn't just that modules have documentation, but roles and plugins also have to have documentation. It will not let a partner or user upload anything without documentation, as I found out going through the beta test, which I think is a very good thing, because I think documentation should be required, or no one's going to use it and they'll be frustrated. I can also click on content. So I can actually start filtering content by type. So in this case, they have all kinds of different types of content. I can filter by module. I can start typing like a particular word. So if I know if there's a load balancer, like there's offload, you can see that it's really quick to be able to filter down. So if I can't quite remember the name of a particular module, I can kind of dive in and grab that particular thing. I can see module utilities. Let's just go in and click on a module to show the documentation. Virtual server. This is like a virtual IP for load balancing. Is when I dive in here, I can actually see very similar, people should be familiar with this, module documentation, where they have a synopsis of what it does, breakdowns of key value pairs for each of the module parameters. And then at the bottom, there's a lot. They'll actually have examples, which I think is the most important part, is you actually see an example of how this is used. So we can dive into any collection that same way. Is I can do the same thing, go back to collections on the left. I can click on Google Cloud. I can click on contents. I can click on modules. And then really in here, I can say, I want to know how GCP does network points on a network card. So I can grab this module. I see what it does. I scroll down, and this particular one doesn't have, oh, there we go. There's the examples. And it shows you how to use this particular module, namespace, and then the module name. So partners will see this my namespaces and my imports. At launch, really just partner content is going to be in here. We can see all of the partners at the top level that we have. And I think we're going to switch back to the slides in a section to show that. So you can see here that these folks have signed agreements for the launch, and they're working with us because they want to be part of Automation Hub. So you can see we have companies like Google Cloud, Aruba, part of HP. CyberArk is very popular with Ansible users. Checkpoint Firewalls, NetApp Storage, Microsoft Azure. Cisco has a bunch of collections. Some Cisco content is actually made by Red Hat for iOS routers, and some is made by Cisco in a joint partnership where they do ACI module development. You see Dell EMC here, Rubrik for storage, Sensu, monitoring, Dynatrace, Pure Storage, F5, load balancing, and then you see Ansible as really it's just me on that Ansible account right now, but you'll actually see kind of us create our collections as well as we start distributing it that way. And then finally you see Arista, a network route and switch vendor, and Fortinet at launch. And what you can do is actually just click, you can also click from the partner viewpoint rather than the collections viewpoint, and click on a particular partner that you know certifies, and you'll see that their collections are here. And if they have multiple collections, it's obviously searchable, and you can see the amount of content. For this one, they only have modules and plugins, but they don't actually have roles. So as we kind of grow this content, our goal is to not just have modules and plugins that help with a faster release cadence and allow partners to distribute content as fast as they need to, but it also provides more pre-canned playbooks that are reusable, because there's only so many ways you could write like a backup playbook or provision this RHEL server onto Google Cloud. Like those are super easy examples that can start being provided by these collections to make it automation more easy and turnkey for customers. Rich, I don't know if you want to share slides anymore, or just start moving over to you.
Push back to me, and I'll just it'll help me just talk over this final one, just to.
Right.
So if anybody's got any questions that they're thinking about, having seen what we've spoken about, please put them in the webinar window, and we'll answer those afterwards. Pass you back control, Sean.
Let me hand it back to you. You'll be able to just click on it, but I can make it. There you go.
And I will just reshare. Okay. Too many screens, too many windows. It asked me a dialog box in the wrong place. Right, so there we go. So yeah, so just trying to wrap up, you know, explain a little bit about why we're trying to build a platform to, you know, sort of as we see people evolve what they're doing, how we build a technology and a set of capabilities that apply to a broader spectrum of users, try and give you more capabilities to make it easier to try and achieve what you want. So if somebody's, you know, asking you, you know, what's the automation platform? You know, yes, it is still those same components, you know, and people take advantage of and get benefit from in Ansible Engine, Ansible Tower. But as Sean's just shown you two of those components, it's also how we can layer on and wrap what is that core execution capability of Ansible in these additional features that we think, you know, and through interaction with customers and feedback are valuable extra capabilities to give you to make your life easier when you're trying to, you know, achieve your automation goals. So, you know, Sean mentioned briefly about collections, how we change through the use of collections, changing how you package content up and make it more transportable, make it more consumable, make it more easy to distribute and easier to contribute to. You know, making it easier to identify what content you can trust, what content is certified. If that's important, a lot of customers, it's very important to know what they can get that joint support from, you know, say Ansible and Google, Ansible F5 or Microsoft, etc., so that you can prove that you can go ahead and achieve your, you know, do your job, because if you need to, you can go and ask the vendor to make sure that their technology works. And so through Automation Hub, you know, the whole focus there is how do we give you, you know, a consistent experience to focus people towards what automation can be used, should be used, how it should be used, discover the information. We don't want to have people, you know, go to 3 or 4 different properties to find out how they should do something. You know, we should be able to give them that experience firsthand. And the important thing about Automation Hub is we've built it for partners. We've built it, you know, from a SaaS model and a, you know, an online only cloud model. But we're looking about how we can take components of that and move it so it can work in an on-premise and a private boundary model. How you as a, you know, as an organization can have your own Automation Hub instance that you use that has your chosen automation content in. So if you're using F5 but not Cisco, don't show the Cisco modules, just show the F5 ones. Just make sure that what your users, you know, as you get to hundreds and hundreds of different users, your internal module content, your internal roles, your internal playbooks you want to share and say, these are the standards of our organization, please use these. How do we deliver that capability down to you? That's going to be something we're focusing on once initial launch is out. And of course, the after event, you know, the analytics, how do we show you what's going on, right? And the important thing here is, you know, most customers have the same requirements. right? So why should you all build it yourselves? We build it once, and then you get to take advantage of that. You get to see that information. Then you can focus on the things that are specific to you and add value specifically to yourselves, rather than worrying about doing something that everybody else is doing. Because if that's not the point of Ansible and the community approach of automation, I'm not quite sure what is. You know, how do we do something once, do something right, and everybody gets the benefit, so that you can spend the time focusing on what's important, very specifically unique and important to your circumstance, to your needs, to your desires, and to your goals. So yeah, so that's it. And obviously Sean mentioned a bunch of the different partners that will be coming along as well. And you know, our aim now is always to keep adding these in. But I think overall that's really what the platform is all about. Just interested in what anybody else thinks now. Anyone else to ask anything? Still got no questions, which is also fine. Hopefully it means you've answered everything you could thought to ask.
I just had a couple questions I'll read out. Someone had a question, hold on a second. I wish there was a better way to read these. Are Ansible collections in any way related to content that can be found on Ansible Galaxy? So Ansible Galaxy used to not support collections. Galaxy is a repository of repositories, as we joke. It's an aggregation point for multiple GitHub repos. It's specifically tied to GitHub. Galaxy now supports collections, so community folks can share collections within Ansible Galaxy. The concept of a collection is fairly new. We have a lot of content and documentation around collections, but to suffice to say, a collection is just a structured directory system similar to an Ansible role, but it now includes opinionated ways on how to store modules, module utilities, roles, multiple roles, whereas Galaxy previously only had a one-to-one correlation where like a GitHub repo would equate to a role, and you could call multiple Galaxy repos to have multiple roles, where now you can have a namespace and a collection. So you can include multiple collections, and within those collections could be dozens of roles, depending on how you want to break it out. So it's just another hierarchical structure. Automation Hub, again, is the supported downstream product for sharing it. It actually has the concept of these tarballs that can share specific information from a moment in time and allows us to do releases. Hub is not tied in any way to Git, SCM, or GitHub. However, obviously a lot of our partners prefer using that, and the Ansible project itself uses Git. So there's a little bit of a difference in how Hub operates, and it's specifically built in a way to create like a release cadence. It's something I didn't actually show in the screen, but you can click release within it, and then you can grab different releases and install that release specifically. So if a partner happened to introduce a bug, they could create a new release and then send you the command to install that new version.
There's also workflow to gate the content that gets loaded into Automation Hub as opposed to Galaxy. So in Galaxy, you publish content, it's there, you know, warts and all. Whereas with Hub, you know, when you upload that content, there's a secondary workflow that says, yes, I'd like to publish this content as well now, because you can see the output of the import workflow. You can see the test results that come back from what the import workflow puts the content through, and make sure you're happy with it before you, and then you can publish it and unpublish it and things like that. So we're building that workflow specifically for the sort of use of what we believe and hear from customers. That story of, I want to manage the content that I'm allowed to use, or that I want people to use. And if somebody wants, you know, we don't want to control that. If somebody wants to push all content that they can find into there, they're more than welcome, right? But there's no limitation to it. It's just the fact that some people do want to have a very controlled, understood story. And, you know, downloading from Galaxy isn't acceptable to a lot of large, you know, regulated government departments and companies. So it's finding the best of both, and we will obviously be working on ways to sync. If you identify content in Galaxy you want, how we can possibly sync that through to Hub in a private context. But these are all things that will come over time.
Let me unmute myself. So another question was, I logged into access.redhat.com and tried to see the Ansible automation platform software as a service offerings. So it's actually cloud.redhat.com. So Access is kind of the customer portal for like KB's documentation that's behind the login window. The software as a service offerings are tied into that same system, so it's the same ID, but it's on cloud.redhat.com. Now you will not see the Ansible automation platform because it doesn't launch until the 14th. However, it's in beta, so depending on your credentials, you could probably just type /beta and see it, depending on how it's set up. But you might just have to wait till the actual launch happens. You also need to actually have a Red Hat Ansible automation subscription. Previously, you would have to have it depends on your SKU. I would just recommend talking to your sales team. But basically, there's a path forward depending on whatever type of customer you are, and we can get you into the SaaS offerings. But you just need your Red Hat login ID and administrative access to that tower. Now, Automation Analytics doesn't have anything in it by default, so we'll actually be launching a blog post this week on how to turn on information gathering in your Ansible Tower cluster. It's really easy. There's just a knob under settings, and you log in with your same cloud.redhat.com username and password. So it's pretty trivial. There's a question of follow-up. So to reiterate, the Ansible automation platform is an online-only offering available at cloud.redhat.com, and there's not an offering to be able to stand up the internet-isolated environment a la Ansible Tower, correct? So I think there's a confusion in the question. This is from Henry Link. Is the platform the aggregate of all things Ansible? Is to make this really simple for customers. We used to have SKUs for, I buy just engine support, I could buy network automation support, I could buy tower support. And obviously there's tons, if not infinite use cases for automation, and that doesn't scale, and customers weren't happy, our sales teams weren't happy. And in addition, we needed new stuff like this, like we talked about for this platform to engage with users. Like the automation analytics was going to exist regardless of the go-to-market. So we go to market, we sell one thing, that's a Red Hat Ansible Automation Platform subscription. And then you get this extra software as a service offerings like automation analytics included in that. There is no price increase from our existing one, but it's not online only if you're talking about the platform holistically. You can still have engine and tower in an isolated environment and not use the software as a service. Or in Hub's case, we have plans to allow isolated off-premise things in the future roadmap. As I said before, there's tarballs of that content. So there's ways to distribute it now if you just grab the content. But for automation analytics, it doesn't really even make sense to have an on-prem version because we wouldn't be able to put it through a rules engine, and we have to collect and aggregate data from like tons of points. And obviously we need to compare the stripped data to other customer sets and be able to do interesting things with it. So while Hub will have some version of on-prem and abilities for customers to do that because they need to be able to grab collections and put it in an isolated environment, automation analytics doesn't really have a use case there. It doesn't really make sense. So hopefully that answers the question is, of course you can use Ansible automation in an isolated environment, but specifically automation analytics probably doesn't make sense for that particular use case, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, just to that point, I mean, the security automation being the perfect example. If we'd had separate SKUs for that, that would have been a fourth SKU and then a fifth SKU for Hub and analytics. It would have got very messy for customers. But for the question with Hub, you can still use Hub and download the collections because you can download to an internet connected machine, download through the Ansible Galaxy CLI tool that's available in Ansible Engine, and then distribute that content into your network the way you would normally with any other software download that you make. Any other questions, Sean?
Not related to the platform. There's a question about AWS support and collections. So Amazon is not part of the launch partners, but it is a strategic partner. So it's on the roadmap. but the support offering currently is not changing. We're just trying to work with Amazon to kind of port things into collections. The collection's a little bit different from the platform. It's just a way for sharing data. Like the goal of collections in Hub, right, is not just to mark what's certified and supported easier, but it's to fix things where, let's say I had an AWS module like EC2 and Botto 3 changes their API like in, I don't know, what month is it? It's November. So Botto 3 changes their API November 6th. In the old Ansible world, I would have to wait until Ansible 2.10 launched, which could be 4 to 6 months. Or I could move to dev branch. So if I'm a bank, like North Carolina Bank, I got to go now convince my security team, ops team, infrastructure team to upgrade Ansible to a dev branch so that I can get the AWS fix to continue doing my job. By disaggregating the content, in this case a module, from the actual execution automation engine, I can now distribute that module quicker, easier, faster directly from that vendor. So that's like a huge value prop, is being able to move content away from like the actual platform. So just like, again, going back to like a smartphone, I can upgrade my iPhone and my app separately. They're two ships in the night, but they're very much interdependent. Hopefully that helps out. I would suggest always working with your account team at Red Hat to understand which modules are supported, and keep in mind that obviously AWS is a huge strategic partner of Red Hat, and that we will try to get them into Automation Hub and marked accordingly, and we want to work with them for sure. I think that's the end of the questions. I think I got them all. They're really good questions. I super appreciate folks joining. This will be recorded. I'm actually surprised. I think this is the first time ever I didn't actually get that question answered or asked in here. Usually, like immediately after saying it, someone will just mess with me at the very minimum. Richard, I appreciate you speaking today, and I'm gonna go ahead and close the bridge down.